And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doing Podcast. My name is Brendan Deek. Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. You can also rate the podcast and review the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. It would also be greatly appreciated. No comments on the beard, please, in the comment section and on Twitter. I know I look like a child, but we're gonna have to battle through it. I am joined by I'm joined by the creator and host of the Film Room on YouTube. He's one of my favorite content creators out there, Brett Kollmann. Is with me. Brett, how we doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, man. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. Know you're a busy guy. First, I have to ask, how was the Bills Packers game?
Oh my God, people from Western New York can cook, man. That was my main takeaway. The food was ridiculous at that tailgate. I think it was the first Sunday night game in Buffalo since like 2007.
Really?
So it was packed shoulder to shoulder. Everybody was loud. It was great environment. Obviously the Bills winning probably helped with that, but Packers fans were there and they were in a good mood. Everybody had a good time. Like it was a great experience. I think that might be my favorite NFL city I've been to so far.
Yeah, so I'm from Toronto, so I'm about an hour and a half away. I've been to a few Bills games. The tailgate is like, I feel like I've been to Eagles game. I've been to couple Eagles games as well. The Bills tailgate is just a different ball game. Like they do it well there. They do it good.
Yeah, we got there at noon for an 8:20 kick, and I still felt like we were late.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm planning on going to the Eagles Packers Sunday night, November 27th, and I'm like, when do I even go to the stadium? Like,
is that in Philly?
It's in Philly, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to I want to be able to physically watch the game. Like, I don't walk, right? I'll be in the bag by the time the game starts. But let's jump into some topics. And perfect. I'm really happy that I got you on for today because just a whirlwind of news happened today, especially, I guess the main one is starting with the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts fire head coach Frank Reich after 4.5 years. He finished with a 40-33-1 record. They hire former center and ESPN analyst Jeff Saturday to be the new head coach. I guess we'll just start with this. What was your kind of instant reaction to this news?
Confusion. Yeah. I understand the Frank Reich firing on some level. I think there's honestly what got him fired, I think, was selling Jim Irsay on Carson Wentz. I think Jim Irsay lost trust in Frank Reich as soon as that didn't work out. And then he gave him like one more shot with Matt Ryan. And once that didn't work out, he's like, all right, you're gone. And it's not necessarily all Frank Reich's fault. Like there were some things that I felt like were a little bit out of his control. But at the same time, like he's the head coach, the team was not playing up to its potential. At some point, the buck stops there, and he's going to have to take accountability for that. The fact that he had an over 500 record when he only had 1 year of Andrew Luck, and then the rest of it was Jacoby Brissett, Brian Hoyer, Carson Wentz. There was a year of Phillip Rivers when he was like 40. And then, Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger. The fact that he was over 500 with that collection is like kind of a miracle in its own right. So he can coach. It just wasn't working out anymore. And I think the owner lost trust because the owner felt like they wasted arguably their best roster with a year of Carson Wentz. And I just think Irsay never got over that. Ballard escaping with his job was interesting to me because I would argue a lot of the problems with the roster that made it so that Matt Ryan didn't work out were the fault of Ballard. In particular, the offensive line is kind of a mess still. And when you have an immobile old quarterback behind an offense like that, you're going to struggle. There were, I think, some defensive investments that maybe haven't panned out like they were supposed to. Defensive line is still fine, but everything beyond that, I feel, has been average to below average at best. And I do think that Ballard deserves a lot of criticism himself for how the roster has been constructed. Whether he gets fired after the season, I guess we'll find out. On to the Jeff Saturday part of it. That was the confusing thing. Because as of 24 hours ago, he was a TV personality. And I get he's consulted for the Colts before, and obviously he has a lot of experience as a player. But his only coaching experience is being head coach for a lower level high school program in Georgia where he was barely over 500.
He was 20-16 as a high school head coach.
So I'm like, that's head coaching resume now. I'm sure there's a lot of assistants on the Colts. In fact, there are assistants on the Colts staff that have head coaching experience that we could have at least turned to for an interim. And Jeff Saturday is the one we're turning to. Like, are we punting the season here and we're just trying to bring in a culture guy because we're acknowledging that everybody's getting fired? Or are we embracing the tank and just hoping for Bryce Young or Levis or Stroud or whoever? Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't understand the plan. And this is nothing against Jeff Saturday. The freak's a wonderful human being.
Mm-hmm.
That's your head coach pick?
I can't find logic behind it. Like I'm trying to like when something happens in the NFL, when news breaks, you kind of want to look at it from both sides and think like, okay, what were they thinking? What was their kind of decision making process behind this? I can't find one here. Like I don't really like. It's only the only thing I can think of is Jim Irsay is like enamored by the guy and thought like it was kind of like the Josh McCown thing with Houston, right? Where they would just love him for some reason and they want to get him in the building and want him to be a head coach, but there's too much backlash so they couldn't do it. And Jim Irsay's kind of feeling the same way about Jeff Saturday, with the way that the Houston Texans brass felt about Josh McCown, and they're just like, screw it, we're just going to do it. We're just going to bring him in and screw what everyone else says. But like, how much is Jeff Saturday really the best candidate out there? Like, you couldn't bring in is there anyone internal that could take over the gig and then you can figure it out at the end of the year? That's the normal process, right? That seems like the best process that you should go is hire an internal candidate, figure this out after the year.
I would think so. And I'm sure honestly, there's probably a lot of lower level assistants that are kind of low key pissed about it.
Yeah, for
that,
sure.
Grind their way through the coaching ranks and would love for an opportunity. And we're doing an external hire for somebody with no NFL coaching experience. Like, if we're going to just pick a former Colts great, Reggie Wayne's there. He's on the staff. He's an actual coach. Like, okay, let's maybe I could sort of argue that, but right now you got a guy who's never coached as an NFL head coach ever, and no offensive coaches have play calling experience on the staff. If this somehow works out when they score more than 10 points, it will be a miracle, like a straight up miracle.
Yeah. Like, is Robert Mathis coming in and be the DC? Got Brandon Stokely coming back. Like, I like what's going on here? Are you bringing the band back together?
Honestly, I'd give Peyton a call. I'd give Peyton a call and say, "Can you come call play?" At least Peyton's done that before, technically. Like,
So I want to go back to you brought up Chris Ballard, and I think this is a great point here. The Colts went into this season, in my opinion, and I talked about this on our AFC South preview on this podcast. I said they went into the season thinking that they have a Carson Wentz problem. And they got rid of that problem, and then everything's going to be okay. That's kind of what they told you, right? They traded Carson Wentz away, and then they signed Matt Ryan. They didn't really do much else. They brought in Yannick Ngakoue, but that's pretty much it. Like they made this bed. They said, if we get rid of Carson Wentz, we're going to be 10-7, 11-6, whatever the record's going to be. We're going to win the AFC South. It's all going to be fine and dandy. That's not the case, and that was never the case. Like, Carson Wentz played bad the last 2 weeks of the season, but he was I think 17th in EPA per play per quarterbacks last season. He was middle of the pack. He did fine with that offense. Like, you say what you want about Carson Wentz, but I didn't really understand their reasoning behind bringing in Matt Ryan over Wentz. Like, you can make the argument. I think it's probably a fair argument that Wentz is a better quarterback than Matt Ryan. So that process has never worked out, and this is probably the obvious one. I put this on Twitter, and it's probably been around as well. This franchise has never recovered from Andrew Luck retiring.
No, it's been 5 years now.
Yeah,
and they're still soul searching. Like, they never ever replaced him, and I think part of that is because they refused to rebuild. Mm-hmm. They have been living as if they're in the window for 4 or 5 years now. And they're like, we can just patchwork this thing together and we'll make it work. Like, they refuse to just acknowledge that they gotta start over. And it sucks because they weren't supposed to have to start over, because they were supposed to be in the window with Andrew Luck. Mm-hmm. And they never acknowledged that the best thing for the franchise was to tear it down to the studs and begin again, like what they had to do when they first got Luck in 2012. And so they just kept kicking the can down the road, and we're going to do this thing with Jacoby, and we're going to do this thing with Hoyer, we're going to do this thing with Phil. And they got close with Phil, And they're like, oh, we're right there. Okay, Carson's the guy. Okay, we were right there. We need Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's the guy. Like, they can't just bite the bullet and say, we're done. Yeah. We're done. Let's get rid of our bad contracts. Let's do the thing the Bears are doing right now, which is offload all of our bad contracts. We'll keep the young core that we like there. We're going to eat this pain for 1 year, and then we're gonna get a whole bunch of draft assets and money and then start over. Mm-hmm. They aren't doing that, and I think now they're kind of forced to. Like, it's over. They have to be real about it now and acknowledge they suck. It's over. They have to start over.
Yeah, like Sam Ehlinger is clearly not the guy. And like that's another thing too. This team never infused the roster around the quarterback with good talent while they were doing this process. Like Michael Pittman was the best weapon they brought in. I guess you can throw in Jonathan Taylor on that, but like it's not like when you're looking for a veteran quarterback, which most teams do, and their roster is built around it. The roster was slowly diminishing around it, and they were still looking for that veteran quarterback. It's just lack of self-awareness on this team, and that's the worst thing that a general manager can have in an ownership or an entire organization can have, right?
I think it's one of those things where it's like, when you get close to making playoff runs, there's one of two reasons. Either that was your peak, and your peak is that you were close, or something happened and that's your valley, and your valley is that you're close. Mm-hmm. I think they thought they were in their valley, and they thought their peak was Super Bowl, and that, we're just one injury away, or we're one piece away. They thought they were in their valley. They were actually at their peak. That's what they mistook. And that was their mistake.
Think Frank Reich's a head coach in 2023?
I mean, maybe, depending on how many jobs are available. Like, I could see the Panthers giving him an interview, depending on what happens there. I'm still not 100% sure what's going to happen in Arizona. Like, I know they just gave everybody.
They just gave 6-year contracts to both offensive guys. It's insane. It's crazy.
I get they did the extensions for everybody, but I mean, like, you got to look at what's there right now. It's not good.
It'll have to come from ownership, because if Kingsbury goes, Steve Keim's got to go too. Like, that's how I look at it.
I don't know. I get the sense that,
are they not?
I get the sense. No, I think Keim's more tied to ownership than Keim tied to Cliff. Keim and Bidwell are like best buds. I don't know if Keim's ever gone, ever.
One playoff appearance in the last 8 years. He just got a 6-year deal. It's insane.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I have a soft spot for Frank Reich. Back to just him quickly before we transfer on. I'm an Eagles guy, 2017, like that offense. And I would have liked to see him go down with Foles, like not Ehlinger. I wanted to see if he could maybe recreate some Foles magic. It was probably not going to happen.
Foles magic at this point. God, we are grasping at straws.
Yeah, literally. I think Frank Reich's still a good coach. I do believe he deserves another shot somewhere. Like, getting the best out of Phillip Rivers, and you can argue he got the best out of Wentz, at least, right? A little bit there, because Wentz is like, he was, again, like middle of the pack in efficiency throughout the year. So you can make the argument maybe he got the best out of him there. Look at Wentz in Washington now. He's a shell of himself. So I think he deserves another shot, but where that shot can come is definitely the question. But I want to transition to probably my favorite topic going on right now, because I'm like, I just blown away that this team isn't even in this spot, and that's the Green Bay Packers. They're 3-6. They just lost again yesterday. The Detroit Lions. The Lions have one of the worst defenses of all time heading into that game. They just fired their defensive back coach, Aubrey Pleasant, and the Packers put up 9 points on them. You actually did a film review on the Packers before the Lions game. I think a lot of it still applies to what's going on, and it probably emphasized a lot more of what you studied and kind of improve your point, right? But I guess I'll just leave this an open-ended question. Brett, what the hell is wrong with the Green Bay Packers?
See, it's funny because, leading into like weeks 1 through 7, they kind of had a pretty consistent problem, which is they would stall out at midfield, right? And I covered that in the episode where they were 8th in explosive plays of 20 yards or more, and they were 6th in overall play success rate, but their third down specifically was horrific. And their third down in between the 40s, where they were passing way more than they were running, was even worse. They were like 26th or 27th in the league, somewhere around there. And so they were really bad at sustaining drives, and therefore they were really bad at putting up points. You get to week 8, which is the game I was at over in Buffalo, and they kind of flipped the script a little bit and they ran more. They ran a lot, and they were able to sustain more drives. But because they were running a lot more, the drives were taking up a lot more clock. And, if you just have a couple turnovers or a couple stalls when you're only giving yourself 9 possessions, which they had a couple drives that ended, not being able to move the ball in fourth down and like 1 or 4th and 2. And then you had the interception. Like if you cost yourself 3 drives out of 9, you're not going to put up a whole lot of points, even if you're being efficient and you get a couple nice touchdown drives. Like you're artificially capping the amount that you can even score by only having 9 possessions because you run so much, and it makes your margin for error extremely small. So you can't turn the ball over like they did against Buffalo. And once they fell behind by 17, they were done. And then you get to week 9 against Detroit, and it was fascinating because then a whole new problem popped up. And it's funny because the defense played a lot better in that game. Probably their best defensive performance of the year, all things considered. And they were able to sustain drives. And more importantly, they sustained drives while throwing. They had some really good, plays to Allen Lazard. They were working the slot fades really well. They actually performed decent on offense for the most part until they got to the red zone.
Yeah.
Weeks 1 through 8, they were actually pretty good red zone offense, especially low red zone. Week 9, they get to the red zone and turn it over 3 times. And so what I find fascinating is that every single week now, there's a new problem. They fix one thing and another thing pops up. It's like playing whack-a-mole.
It's like that's a sign of a bad football team. Like
exactly.
That's like the number one sign of a bad team.
Poorly coached teams find a way and find a new thing to be bad at in every game. A well-coached team might have 1 or 2 weaknesses that they need to fix before they get to playoff time. A bad team, it's something new every week. And I get there's been a lot of injuries, and there's still injuries this week. They lost Rashawn Gary. Dub's got a high ankle. Like it's a new injury every week, but it's so much more than that. Like they are just, I'm not saying Matt LaFleur is a bad coach, but they are doing things that badly coached teams do this year.
There was a press conference where Matt LaFleur was talking about how Zach Tom wasn't ready to start for it going in for David Bakhtiari. He's like, Zach Tom wasn't ready because he didn't get the reps on practice on Friday. It's like, if Bakhtiari is practicing Friday, he should be playing Sunday, and you should be ready for that, right? Like the stuff that's coming out of LaFleur's mouth is kind of weird. Like it doesn't seem like the Packers of old. Like I don't know if Devontae Adams getting traded sparked all this, but something happened this offseason where this whole kind of system, that this efficient offense, like 2020 first in paper play, 2021 first in paper play, they were an efficient offense back-to-back years, and now they're showing themselves 24th in the league right now in efficiency on offense, 22nd, sorry, and the 24th per drop back. It's a shell of himself, and it's kind of interesting to watch, if that makes sense. It's like everything's crashing down.
Well, when your offensive line drops massively in performance from one year to the next, that's a big source of it, because they're not running other than the Buffalo game, they're not running the ball as well as they did in the past. Buffalo game was kind of weird. It's like the one game where they had a lot of rushing success. And so the offensive line in general has not pass protected as well either as in years past. They're not blocking as well in the run game as they have in years past, which puts more of the load onto Aaron to be perfect. And in the past, you could kind of get away with that because Aaron had Devontae that you could put some of that load on. It's like, hey, Devontae, go get open. I'm going to throw you a crazy ball. You're going to make a crazy catch. We're going to get a first down and keep it rolling. Now, without that, now Aaron's like, Al Lazard, go make a crazy catch.
It seems like the slot, like you brought up, the slot fade was working. It seems like every third down man beater is a slot fade right now. Like that's all
they got. It's all they got. And you got in the red zone. And so as a quick aside, the low red zone miscommunications with Sammy Watkins were the best example of why not having Devontae matters. Because in the past, you get an X receiver that lines up that has an inside leverage corner on the goal line. Devontae would look at Aaron would look at Devontae, and he'd say, go run the fade. That's what you do. You get inside leverage, you run a fade. He's head up, or if he's head up, then you give, kind of like a little jab release and then burst inside. Like you're isolated as an X receiver specifically to look at the leverage of the corner and run one of 3 different routes based on that leverage. If he's outside leverage, that probably means you're getting doubled, so you're not going to get the ball. But if they then use motion or something to pull a safety and he's outside leverage, you're running a slant. So there's a whole bunch of different options they had at the goal line. And literally the route is read it, and I'm going to throw it based on that read. So Sammy Watkins, in the same role that Devontae used to have, lined up, 2 yards off the goal line, corner was inside leverage. You saw Aaron look at him, expecting him to run the fade. Aaron threw the fade. Sammy ran a slant into inside leverage. And it's like, that's the thing. That is the missing piece. They would have won that game if Sammy ran the right freaking route. Yeah. But he's not Devontae. He doesn't read it like Aaron does. And Aaron has high expectations for his receivers to read defenses like him. And he doesn't have that guy. They will not recover from not having Devontae Adams, not just because Adams is a great receiver, but because Adams knew what Aaron wanted to throw.
Yeah. Like watching them run these RPO smoke routes with Sammy Watkins, like,
it's horrible.
It's painful to watch. And it couldn't
It's terrible
for Packers fans. I heard this question today, and I wanted to relay it to you because I thought it was really interesting. The Raiders conversation is a whole different conversation. I don't want to get into it today, but do you think both teams, if they had the chance today, would flip-flop that trade? Like they would, if they knew the 9-game outlook of what both teams look like right now, do you think they would both veto it today?
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the Packers 100% would. The Raiders, I feel like, is...
I think the Packers could look at 3 different games and say we would have won that with Devontae, in which case they'd be right in line for chasing a first seed. They would undo it in a heartbeat. The Raiders probably wouldn't, because they still feel like they're in a multi-year window and not just a 1-year window. They might just look at this as like, first-year head coach. We're kind of, trying to get things together. Like I think they still kind of want to run this back for 2023. The Packers 100% would. They would move heaven and earth and pay any amount of money to keep Devontae. Yeah. In fact, they tried to, and Devontae said no.
The Raiders, the Devontae Adams contract is like, it's kind of set so after 2024 they can kind of move on. I think it's like a $15 million dead cap in 2025, which they probably realize and they'll bite the bullet on that. So it's fascinating from the Raiders side of things, but yeah, just sticking on the Packers, it's 100%. Like they are definitely missing them, and it's showing. And everyone went into this year going, which team's going to miss their star receiver more, the Chiefs or the Packers? The question's answered right now. Like
it's funny because the Chiefs, to a degree, in some situations, still kind of miss Tyreek.
Yeah,
but like not entirely. It's more so like there's certain situations and matchups where it's like, God, it would have been nice to have Tyreek. But you look at the Packers and it's like they really missed Devontae.
So I was listening to Jason Fitzgerald break down the Aaron Rodgers contract and kind of what the future looks like for the Packers. So he has a $59 million bonus due for him on September 1st of next year. So right before the season starts.
Mm-hmm.
That can be negotiated. They can kind of figure that out and find other ways to pay it. And the whole cap, I don't want to get into that, all the cap scenario problems, but basically $59 million and $99 million still guaranteed can be moved, basically. If you're the Green Bay Packers, Brett, what are you doing? I think it's over. Like, take a look at the NFC. Seattle Seahawks, 6 wins. Dallas Cowboys, 6 wins. New York Giants, 6 wins. Eagles, 8 wins. Vikings, 7 wins. Like, two wildcard spots are going to come from the NFC East, most likely. The Giants could possibly implode. I think there's probably a realistic shot for that. But I think the Cowboys, Eagles are going on. Like, I'd be shocked if the Packers make the playoffs. So they have a decision to make. What would you do? What would you do for the 2023 Green Bay Packers? Would you run it back? Like, how does this all work?
No, it's over.
Yeah.
And not like, if they got healthy on defense and, maybe they lucked into a receiver in the draft or what, but like you look at their money situation. Remember, the cap for the Packers works a lot differently than the cap for a team that is owned by an owner that has $15 to $20 billion. They can do things for those teams with those rich owners that the Packers just can't do.
They're a pay-as-you-go franchise.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are certain teams where if they were in this situation, they would be okay and they would be able to maneuver and do things. Green Bay doesn't have that luxury. And so I look at their cap situation, their current roster situation, and I'm just thinking, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it to dig even deeper in a hole that a franchise is not financially equipped to really get themselves out of easily? So I'm saying screw it. Let Aaron ride off into the sunset. You know, do I really want to start Jordan Love? Probably not.
No.
But at this point, depending on how high their pick is, there might be a young guy in the draft they like better anyway. Eat one horrible year of getting rid of bad contracts with dead cap and all that kind of stuff. Again, just like the Bears are doing. Hopefully that young quarterback, whether it's Love or somebody else, shows some sort of sign of development. And then in 2024, when we get more picks and more money, we can try to rebuild this thing from the ground up. But like, it's over. Tear it down to the studs before it gets even worse. Have one objectively horrific year in 2023 and try to come back in 2024. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I agree. They have the 8th overall pick right now in the draft.
Yeah, so like they might be in range to go get a Levis or a Stroud or a Young, or we don't know what's going to happen in the draft, but like it's not like they're going to keep winning games and improve their draft. Like eight's probably the lowest they're going to be. They could probably go higher than that.
Quick, you just brought up Levis. I got to ask you, what do you think of him? I don't get it. I don't get the hype. I know it's early, but
man, I haven't studied him enough to really have an opinion yet. But he's talented.
I'm waiting for the team that takes him over Stroud or Bryce Young. It's going to happen. Someone's going to do it. And I don't know. I haven't studied him enough either, but that name is it's so fascinating, this draft with those 3 quarterbacks. Someone's gonna overscout Levis and take him over Young or Stroud. I can't wait for that to happen.
And then Hendon Hooker is gonna go in the 3rd round and probably end up being the best out of all of them, because of course he will. That's just how the NFL works.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts. He's older than Jalen Hurts right now.
Is he?
Yeah, he's older than Jalen Hurts and Tua. I think Hendon Hooker. Or Tua's like a couple months older. Hendon Hooker's like 26 years old almost right now.
I knew he was old. I didn't know he was that old.
Yeah, he's older than Hurts. He's like 2 years older than Trey Lance.
That's crazy.
Fascinating with Hendon Hooker. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, I want to transition to this. They're 8-0 right now. Best start in franchise history. They've never been 8-0. They're getting a lot of not heat in the media, but just a lot of pushback saying that they haven't played a tough schedule. And I guess you can kind of buy that. That argument's Swiss cheese, in my opinion, with every team that you talk about. But what do you make of the Eagles 8-0 start, Brett?
It's hard to be 8-0 in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's hard to win games in this league. I mean, we saw the Vikings get pushed to the wall by the Commanders yesterday. Like, it's hard to win games. And so I get it. The schedule is soft, but going undefeated in this league for 2 months is one of the hardest things to do in all of professional sports. And I think that is a testament to how deep this roster is, how multifaceted this roster is, how good the coaching staff is, how good the front office is, how great Jalen Hurts has been, the moves that they've made to get AJ Brown and, acquire more picks and assets and, using the Carson Wentz trade to their advantage to parlay that into even more picks and assets, which then ended up being AJ Brown. It's been a masterclass by Howie Roseman over the last couple of years. He made a good coaching hire, Nick Sirianni. They made a great pick in Jalen Hurts, who at the time I said was a 1st-round talent. He ended up going in the 2nd round.
Okay. Well, I don't think you're one of the first people I've ever heard that kind of usually people swung like he should be a 3rd-round talent.
Oh, I loved him. Okay. I mocked him to the Saints that year at 26, if I recall correctly. And I said he would have been perfect for Sean Payton. And then he went in the 2nd round. And that was back before we even knew that Carson Wentz was going to implode. Yeah. And everybody's like, no, they already have Carson. They paid him $100 million. And I was like, yeah, but Carson gets hurt a lot. And if Carson gets hurt a lot, I'd love to have a great backup quarterback, because having a great backup quarterback is what won them a Super Bowl in the first place. And so I looked at it from that standpoint of like, they're going to have the best backup in the league. And if Carson goes down for a long time, you can still make a run with Jalen Hurts. What I didn't foresee was Carson imploding and then Hurts end up, being the guy anyway. Mm-hmm. But I loved the pick at the time because I was like, hey, you're only as good as your worst quarterback, And so he ended up working out for a completely different reason than I expected. But like, I loved it. I had a 1st-round grade on him. And I just think that it's a testament to the coaching staff, the front office, and to Hurts himself, how good this team is. And I will always repeat the point of schedule is schedule. You can only play who you're supposed to play. And if nobody can beat you, regardless of what their record is, if nobody can beat you, you're probably a pretty damn good team.
Yeah.
So if people can say, they're going to have an asterisk or whatever if they go undefeated, I don't care. You know how many teams go undefeated ever in NFL history? One.
Yeah.
One. That's it.
Exactly. I think so. Just jumping ahead, I looked at the schedule and it keeps looking like, where's the loss coming? They're playing the Tennessee Titans December 4th. That game.
Oh yeah, that has loss written all over it.
Yeah, I've been preaching that point the last 2 weeks on this podcast on my Eagles shows and whatnot, because like Derek, like we saw what Dameon Pierce did against.
Oh, Derrick Henry's looking at them like they're fucking food.
Exactly.
He's gonna eat them.
And like Mike Vrabel's like he's just such a smart guy with the simulated pressures that he runs and just coverage confusion. I feel like that can cause Jalen Hurts some problems. So I think they're going to probably go 11-0 and then lose that week against the actually I think that would be 10-0 and then lose that week against the Tennessee Titans. So I think they're going to probably finish 15-2, 14-3. They look like they're probably going to win the NFC. Is there a team that you think that could maybe compete with them in the NFC, or are they kind of in maybe a category of their own right now?
I think there's a lot of teams in the AFC that can compete with them, to be honest. I think, a healthy Buffalo, depending on what happens.
The NFC, sorry, in the conference.
Oh, NFC.
Yeah, NFC, yeah.
I think healthy Cowboys could definitely give them a game.
Yeah, sure. I think the Cowboys are the biggest threat in the NFC right now. I do.
Minnesota, I think, would give them a game.
They already did give the Vikings a little butt whipping already.
Yeah, but I again, first year head coach,
game by game for sure.
Yeah. First year head coach, they're still trying to get settled. Like today's Vikings,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else is the Giants. I think they'll split with the Giants in the playoffs, though. Like, yeah, probably give me Philly. Seahawks, 100% would give them a game.
Yeah,
and healthy Niners, I think, would actually beat them. Okay. But healthy Niners is, when are they ever healthy? Never. Exactly. So
and the whole Christian McCaffrey thing's so fascinating because like he looked like their entire offense the other week, and like I want to see more of it. They're my most fascinating team, I think, going down the stretch is the 49ers. Like I'm so curious to see how this all kind of pans out, if they can stay healthy, how McCaffrey's going to look, can Jimmy Garoppolo stay up to par. They're such a cool team in my opinion,
and they're the last team the Eagles should want to play in January.
Yeah,
the absolute last one.
Yeah. Okay, you brought up the Seattle Seahawks. A couple more before we get out of here. Seattle Seahawks 6-3. The win total was 5.5. I think 6.5 or 5.5 in Vegas for most places. I thought that was crazy. That was like my favorite over bet before going into the year. I thought 8 wins was probably like where they're going to go. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be that feisty, annoying team. They'll win 7, 8, 9 games, and Pete Carroll will get some love. But they're better than I thought they could be. 6-3 right now. What's the ceiling for the squad? Like, how is this all kind of come together, Brett?
That's the thing is I think it's the ceiling for the Seahawks is the same as the ceiling for the Eagles. Like, okay, this is a very well-balanced team. Mm-hmm. They have a quarterback who's playing like one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFC. In fact, he's playing like one of the 6 or 7 best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, the whole league right now.
They're going to have 2,000-yard receivers with Lockett and DK. They have a future superstar at running back in Kenneth Walker. They have an offensive line that overall is playing pretty well, and 2 young tackles that in particular are playing really, really well. They have 2 young corners that are playing fantastic, Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant. They have Uchenna Nwosu, who's got like a sack a game at this point.
He's playing really well.
Brooks is a great linebacker. Like they've got pieces all over that roster. And even though they're not as deep as Philly, you put the starting 22 for the Seahawks up against the starting 22 for the Eagles, ain't that different. Like they would give them a game. And I'll tell you what, if that game's in Philly, I would edge Philly. If that game's in Seattle, done. Seahawks win 100%.
Interesting. What did you think Geno would come out like this? Like, is this kind of a shock to you? No,
nobody. If anybody said they expected this from Geno, they're lying.
Yeah.
Even the people that like Geno did not see.
Stephen Ruiz from The Ringer, former guest on the show, he's been a Geno apologist. He loves Geno. I don't think he could have expected it.
No, top 7 quarterback in the league. Even Steve, no way. No, nobody saw this coming. Yeah. Even the people that liked him. And it's great. It's awesome. I love that he's finally getting his chance and opportunity to show what he can do, especially with how, early on in his career, playing on some really awful Jets teams and getting his jaw broken and losing his job because of that. Like, he's been through a lot. So I'm really happy for him. Um, and I think that, this is probably the best roster he's ever been on. And I think that they have a lot of assets to make it even better next year. Like, I don't think this is a 1-year thing. Like, they're going to roll Geno in 2023 again.
2-3 years. Like, he's got this. He's I think 32, so he can.
He's only 32.
Exactly. Like, this is his prime right now.
And he's the oldest quarterback in the league right now that has a quarterback rating over 100. Believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, all the older quarterbacks in the NFC are getting their ass kicked.
Like Stafford, Brady, Rodgers. Like, they're all over 35. Yeah. Huh, interesting.
So he's the oldest good quarterback in the league right now, and he's only 32. Like, he's got plenty of time.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Okay, one more, I guess 2 more, 1.5 more questions for you. I wanted to talk about the Chargers before we get out of here because they're just this Joe Lombardi offense is driving me mental. Herbert is now 33rd out of 34 quarterbacks in air yards per attempt. Where does the blame lie here? Like, I get Herbert deserves some blame. I do. Like, he's not playing. I expect him to be with Mahomes and Allen. Like, that's how much I love Herbert. And it's just not happening right now. So I guess he has to deserve some blame. But I think that this whole offense needs to be ripped apart and start over in 2023. Are you kind of with me on that?
I think part of it, losing Rashawn Slater was massive.
Yeah.
Keenan not being there has been, God, like, that just ripped the heart out of the offense. It's not having Keenan. Mike's got hurt, and they have no speed. Like, they have no speed at receiving core. Like, their fastest guys 4.5. They have one guy that runs 4.4 and he's never on the field for a reason. And so I look at a banged up offensive line that's struggling in pass pro. I look at a receiving core that can't separate because they have no downfield explosiveness. And you have a quarterback who, again, reminder, his ribs are basically Jell-O pudding right now. Like, it's not a recipe for success. And they still somehow, by the grace of God, got to win. But it's not necessarily because of the offense. They just have this random Chargers look that happens sometimes. Like, I was at the Monday night game against Denver where you get a special teams play that sets them up in overtime. And it's like, they shouldn't have won that game. Yeah. They shouldn't have won against Atlanta either, but they find a way. And I guess credit to them for that. But, like, the offense needs an injection of speed. Like, I need oxygen. They need Rashawn Slater to be healthy. They need depth at tackle in case he can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
And they need another tight end too. Like, they've been trying to replace Hunter Henry for a couple, or even they've been trying to replace Jared Cook for a couple of years. And they can't even find somebody as good as Jared Cook was when he was. And they have just
really bad run blocking tight ends. That's another thing too with the run. Gerald Everett and Donald Parham are the worst 2 run blocking tight ends, but like arguably in the NFL. So like that doesn't help him at all when he's just trying to get easy 4, 5, 6 yard carries.
Like you talk about somebody who should have traded for TJ Hawkinson. Like, they should have been the ones to trade for TJ Hawkinson. They could have made that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's frustrating. Like, cause he's got an absolute machine gun of an arm, and he's like dead last in air yards per attempt. The Chargers lead the league in completions before the line of scrimmage. Like, that stat just blows my mind. Like, it's like,
what else can they do?
I wish they had like an intermediate passing game. I get the speed thing, and I get that they can't really do the deep stuff, but like, they should be able to attack that 10 to 20 yard area, and it's not happening right now.
Yeah, and I think part of that's on Lombardi. Like, they really love this concept called Hank, which is curl here, a little sit route, and then 2 flat. Like, they love that because they like to space out a defense because it creates a little bit of a vertical stretch and a horizontal stretch underneath. But the problem is when you call it 10 times a game, you're not going to get a vertical stretch. Yeah. They're just going to sit on it. And then all of a sudden you have to go late to the flat. And if you go late to the flat, you're going to get nothing out of that either. And they love like spacing out an offense, but without actually threatening them deep to maintain the spacing. So it's like, at some point you have to at least threaten you're going to throw deep, like at least try just to show it that it's on the menu. And they're not doing that. And then they wonder why they can't get anything at the 10 to 15 yard range. It's like, well, they don't respect it.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I got a fire out of questions before we go. It's the midway mark basically of the NFL. So I thought I'd grab maybe some award predictions, Super Bowl predictions from you. Gonna put you on the spot here. You ready to go?
Go.
All right. Defensive Player of the Year.
Micah Parsons.
I like that. I think it's 100% him. It's got to be him. Who is your MVP of the league right now?
Patrick Mahomes.
Okay. We're 2 for 2 there. We agree on that. Who is the best team in the NFL you think right now? If you had to pick one, don't give me 2. I need 1.
Eagles.
Eagles. Okay. I'm an Eagles fan.
Assuming, can I give a little caveat?
Yeah, go for it.
If they have Jordan Davis.
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
They can't stop the run without Jordan
Davis.
Yeah,
his absence was clearly noticeable on Thursday night. I'm an Eagles fan, and I think it's the Chiefs still. Like, I just something about that Patrick Mahomes, and watching him last night, like, he was so good. I think he had the most first down conversions of his entire career, and they still needed his legs to win that game. Like, he's a super freak. But okay, and then last one, if you were to pick a Super Bowl game right now, who do you think's in it?
You know, because we still don't know about Josh Allen's elbow, I'm going to not say the Bills because that could be a lot worse than we're thinking. So I'm going to say Chiefs, Eagles, Andy Reid Bowl.
Oh my God. I don't think I could handle that.
I don't think anybody in Philly can handle that.
Imagine like an Eagles Bills Super Bowl. I don't think there's enough alcohol in America.
Like the Eagles, Philly already lost 2 championships this week. If they lose a third this season and it's to Andy,
oh my God,
they're gonna riot.
Yeah, that city will burn down.
Not that they don't love Andy, but
yeah,
that would gut them.
Oh yeah, it would be gut. Like, Andy's a hero here in Philly, but like that would be even more gut wrenching. Brett, thanks so much for doing this, man. Really appreciate it. This was awesome. Before you go, why don't you plug in anything you want the listeners to take a look at? Social media, YouTube channel, all the above.
Yeah, you can find me at Brett Kollmann on YouTube or on Twitter or on any, TikTok, any of those. I think I'm going to work on a Sauce Gardner video this week for anybody who lives on the other side of the Jersey border that might be interested in that. And then, I got a whole bunch of shorts coming out, breaking down different plays here and there.
Make sure to check out his stuff. I will post his YouTube channel link in the description of the podcast. So if you want to find it there, you can grab it from there. Make sure to check out his content. One of the best in the business. Brett, thanks so much for doing this, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.